it's Keely, and I am starting up a new vlog as part of my vlog series that I am starting. And I am now on my way, about to be on my way to a local thrift store that has a huge book section. I'm really looking for books that are on East Asian history or from East Asian authors, or that are South Asian but related to East Asia or Southeast Asia. So I will take you guys along. I will talk more. I have to figure out how to do like a voiceover. If I can figure out how to do a voiceover for a video, that'd be really cool. And then I will just do that. So if I figure that out, that will be the next part of this video. But right now, I just want to get going. I thought I would go through and show you guys all the new books that I got, and then talk through kind of what I'm working on, what I'm thinking at the moment. If you follow my channel for a while, then you know a couple things about me. One is that I read a lot of nonfiction, and two, I change my mind on what I'm like super interested in at least once a year. And most of the time I come back to the same relative topics, but I've really been trying to think more about the possibility of going back to school, which is also something I've talked about a lot on my channel. I graduated with my master's in 2015, and basically ever since then have wanted to go back to school, but it's just never been the right time. I've never made the time for it, never really figured out how that would work. I have enrolled in programs in the past. I did get into a master's in library science program a couple years ago, but due to finances, was only able to take one course, which was like a very introductory course, and I had a great time, but it just kind of sucks that I have not put in the effort to figure out really how I could go back to school. And that's okay, because we've been able to travel and move a couple different times over the years, so it's been a good thing that I wasn't like tied to one place. But now that we've been back in Pennsylvania for going on 5 years, I wanted to really think about what a PhD could look like for me and what area of study I would want to think about or potentially go for. And I am now in that phase where I have set a deadline for fall of 2024, where basically from now, which is March, until fall of 2024, I will be doing independent research, nothing formal, really just me reading a ton of books, trying to attend events, watching documentaries and movies, listening to podcasts, that kind of thing on East Asian studies, and seeing if this is something that I would potentially want to try for a PhD for. I really want a PhD because I would be the first one in my family to do so. It's just always something I've always wanted, always been like a lifelong learner, love school so much. And I spent the last 2 weeks playing with the idea of what does it look like if this is something that I commit to, and my husband and I have agreed that from now until the fall, we are going to take this seriously as if, yes, I am studying and preparing to do that. And basically, if it lasts through the fall and I actually stick with it, then it will hopefully be something I go for. Not necessarily in 2024 to start in fall of 2025, but we'll see how life goes. But in the meantime, I have been picking up a ton of books, and I think some of them I've already showed you, but they will make a little bit more sense now. Also, I know I just did a video where I redid these shelves as my nonfiction shelves, and instead what I want to now do is take all of those off and make this my East Asian Studies shelves. And in doing so, I will then have different categories of books. So this is going to be me kind of loosely categorizing books in my head, but then also seeing what I have and what areas I would need to focus on. I know that I don't think I really have any history of Japan books. I went out to the thrift store, I just got back, and I got a big ass bag of books because of course I did, and I did take some footage, but it's still really weird for me to film in public. Like, I don't like it, and there was a girl coming up behind me as I was filming, and I was like, ew, gross, so I stopped. Not that it mattered, but I will insert clips real quick of just the bookstore. It's just a local thrift store. It has a really good book section, and they typically have like a pretty diverse grouping of books and like things that you'd expect to see at a used bookstore or like thrift store, and then a bunch of books that you would not expect to see. So anytime that I find like academic books, like I found some literature textbooks that are up on the top of my shelf here, I've gotten them from there. So I very much appreciate that whoever lives in this area that's either a professor or students donate all of their textbooks, because if you wonder who buys textbooks, it's me. I have a bunch of books to show you. Zozo is hanging out in the background with me. Ignore my horrible cable management for my work desk. This is only a table from IKEA. I have not yet gotten a really nice desk, but a $40 table from IKEA from 5 years ago is putting in work. Let's get into the books. Some that I know I've shown you before too, that I didn't realize, honestly, this one was going to be such a good help. So this one is the address book that I'm still working my way through. You can see where I'm at. Now this is not only like actual book. Once you get to right here, then it starts acknowledgements and notes. So I really only have, I'm about halfway through, I'd say. I didn't anticipate that this was going to be something that I would potentially put on my research shelves, but it is, because it is covering now a entire section on Korea and Japan and street naming conventions and how they've structured like urban planning and stuff, and I'm writing all over it and getting more recommendations for other books. Did not realize that I had an interest in urban planning for Japan, but apparently now I do. So this will continue to be an interesting one, and one that I will put on my nonfiction Japan/Korea, or maybe just like miscellaneous nonfiction that will somehow apply. Same category with that book will also go this one, Manufacturing Consent by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky. This one is all about their theory, or the propaganda model, which is that basically the United States is deliberate in the things that we are exposed to in the media and the things that we are not exposed to. And one of the huge topics that they will be covering in this book is the Vietnam War. And I know nothing about the Vietnam War, which is kind of the point of this book, in that it's not something that we ever really covered in school. In the United States, at least in the public school system when I was in it, which was a long time ago now, but we never really covered, we spent more time on like pilgrims than we ever did on anything else. I can remember one section learning about Istanbul and Constantinople, and then it moved into American history, but again, American history was like Civil War, Revolutionary War, a little bit of World War I, all of World War II, nothing about Vietnam, nothing about Korea, nothing about the Gulf War, nothing. Basically, it was like a brief little paragraph about like this happened, but we don't talk about it. So I'm very interested in reading more about Vietnam. I am narrowing my studies really down to East Asia, but very much will be impacted and has impacted Southeast Asia. So you will see a mixture of things, primarily focusing on Japan, China, and Korea, but there may be other sources in there like Vietnam or Thailand or Philippines, you know, just Asia as a whole, but really focusing on East Asia. So as I learn more, I will be buying more things. And I have a couple books on China that I just purchased that I'm super excited for. So the first one is China in 10 Words. This is by Yu Hua, and this one is a collection of essays, all really focusing on Chinese culture for the use of 10 specific words. So it's people, leader, reading, writing, Jun, I don't know how the XU is pronounced yet, revolution, disparity, grassroots, copycat, and bamboozle. So this one just sounded like it was going to be really interesting, and I don't really know anything about it, so I'm very excited to get to this one. It's not that long either. So that one obviously will go in Chinese history and actually make the piles. Then I also have The World Turned Upside Down, A History of the Chinese Cultural Revolution by Yang Zhisheng. And this one I saw Heidi from My Reading Life, I think that's her channel. She was talking about reading this one with one of her friends and how having someone to read it with really made a difference. I don't have someone to read it with, but I might reach out to Heidi as I am making my way through and see like, can I talk to you about it? Like, I need someone to talk to about it that has read this. So this is a massive book about the Cultural Revolution in China. Very, very tiny font, but I will be working my way through these slowly. Then I have one that I saw Kaylin from Kaylin Grace Apple, who is my main inspiration for taking this seriously now. She is a PhD student at Yale, looking into matrilineal descent in slavery law. She goes to their Yale's History and African American Studies PhD program, and then she has a group, the Acceptance Society, that I've talked about before, being a new member of, and very much enjoying that. But one of the books that she recently hauled was Where Research Begins, Choosing a Research Project That Matters to You and the World by Thomas S. Mullaney and Christopher Rhea. As I am learning more about PhD programs and the process for all of it, I'm realizing that it really helps if you have more than just a general topic, like you really focus in, which makes sense, I mean, obviously, but it's not something that I ever really thought about outside of just Googling like, what schools near me have PhD programs? So now that I'm actually looking into it, I want to read more books like this and hopefully narrow down what I'm doing. So this is going to go in the general like research miscellaneous pile. Then we have a couple books that are Korean or inspired by Korea. So we have a Korean history. This is Korea, A New History of South and North by Victor Cha and Ramon Pardo. And this one and the next one I saw on an Instagram book club that is for Korean history. And so this one, not that long at all. I thought this would be a great place to start. It's also newer. I'm hoping that what I can do is as I read through this, I'll be looking for the sources. This one sounds like it's going to be pretty interesting. So Korea. Then we also have Flowers of Fire, which I did talk about in a previous video that I wanted to start, and I do very much want to start it. I will be soon. The Inside Story of South Korea's Feminist Movement and What It Means for Women's Rights Worldwide by Ha Won-jung. Very excited for this one. Learn about feminism from other cultures and other countries and see how much I learn. I imagine I'm going to learn a lot. And then the final one that I have for this little section, this one, which is There a Petal Silently Falls, 3 stories by Cho Yoon, translated by Bruce and Ju Chan Fulton. I'm very excited for this one too. This one, like I said, is 3 short stories, and I did start reading it on vacation. I took it with me to Florida. We went on vacation to Florida. Took it with me. We were there for a week and I didn't read it at all because instead in the airport I found this one and read. So this one is not related really to this at all. This is just one that I wanted to read. Found this one in an airport bookstore and I read the whole thing already. The Last White Man by Mohsin Hamid. He wrote Exit West, which I have seen but I have never read. And this one is about a guy named Anders who was a white man and then one day wakes up and doesn't look anything like himself. He looks like a black man. And slowly society is changing where everyone is all the white people are waking up as black people. And it's very, very fascinating how much ingrained racism Anders has, where as soon as he wakes up as a black man, he is immediately talking about how scared he is, how unsafe he feels. He instinctively knows that there are parts of his community that are not safe for him to be in. And it's just such an interesting commentary on race in the United States, particularly black-white race. And it was so fascinating. I really, really enjoyed this book. But that's why I didn't read this one on vacation, because I had this one instead. So this one doesn't count for that. I'm gonna put that one over there. Now a book that I did have that I then got rid of because I wasn't reading it. I was like, this is really good. Someone else should pick this one up. And then I've never found it again in the thrift store. So I just bought another copy and started it over. Is The Making of Asian America by Erica Lee. This one came out very recently within the last few years. It talks a lot about the history of Asia's immigration processes with the United States. This one has been really good so far. So the only thing I've done is I've read through the introduction, and what I've been doing, as you can see, is highlighting anything that is a just like supporting point and then underlining anything that is the author's argument or the author's like main thing that they're going to cover. Like at one point Erica says like, you know, here's part 1, secondly this, thirdly this, and I was like, oh, important. So I like highlight and underline that. This one will go in the general like Asian America section. All right, now I have this gigantic bag from the thrift store and I have no idea how many books I got, but I only spent $16, which is my favorite part of going to thrift stores. So something that I am very interested in terms of learning about East Asia is identity and how people are able to form an identity, how identity changes and how it's influenced by the areas that you're living and the perceptions and stereotypes and all of that. And I'm sure that's something that's been covered a billion times, but it's new to me. Reading more about things that have to do with identity, which you will definitely see come up in a lot of the books that I pick up, particularly when it comes to the perceptions of Western society, of East Asian countries and immigration. So there's at least one book that I haven't purchased yet that I really want to, but I'm trying to slow down, called Orientalism, that by Edward Said, that is very, very popular, and it's looking at the kind of like fetishization, that's a hard word to say, of Eastern cultures by Western cultures. And I am very, very interested in it, especially having grown up with older relatives that were impacted by the Vietnam War and how they talk about things. So I'm very interested. This is something that I will be looking at. So some of the books I know are controversial and I want to read them anyway to learn more about identity and stereotyping. You'll see what I mean. The first one that I picked up is On Gold Mountain by Lisa C. I think this is the only Lisa C that I have. Lisa C's great-great-grandfather arrived in America from China in the 1800s. This is her kind of memoirs of her Chinese American family and looking at the history of her family. And I thought this would be super interesting. So I'm going to have a section of like memoirs too. So this one will be Chinese American, or maybe I'll just put it with Asian American. I don't know yet, but that's what this one is. The next one that I have is one I've never heard of before, but I was super fascinated by it. And this one is called Pink Samurai: Love, Marriage, and Sex in Contemporary Japan by Nicholas Bornoff. And Nicholas is a white guy. So let me see, hold on. I was reading the back and then I Googled it to see if anything like really controversial came up. Yeah, Nicholas Bornoff was born in London, raised partly in Italy, educated in England and France, and then he became a journalist and moved to Tokyo, where he lived for 11 years. And so he wrote about sex lives in Japan and sex culture. And it sounds like it's going to be interesting. Like I'm very slightly concerned. I don't love when I try to learn more about a topic and all I'm getting is books about that topic written by people that are not part of that topic. And it feels really gross. And I know like it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not knowledgeable or a good source, but I also would rather read own voices. We'll see. I'm hoping I can get something out of this one, even if it's like pointing me to other sources. So this one is Japan. And one that's just been on my wish list for a really long time. I've had copies of it in the past and I've put it down and I've never picked it back up. And so this one, when I saw it there, I just decided to grab this one. This one is The Spirit Catches You and Falls Down, and You Fall Down by Anne Fadiman. And it is about a Hmong child, her American doctors, and the collision of two cultures. So I thought this one would also be really interesting for this sense of identity and like clashing cultures, particularly because they're a refugee family from Laos and the care of Leah Lee, a Hmong child diagnosed with severe epilepsy, and then dealing with the American medical system and the Hmong cultural beliefs and medical stuff. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what it is. I'm interested to read more and actually learn more about this one. This one's been recommended to me so many times over the years and I never picked it up. So now I'm going to keep this copy. I'm not donating this copy, damn it. I'm going to keep it. Then one that I never heard of before, but it sounds really interesting, is The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston. This is a Picador classic. Introduction by Zhulu Guo, I think. It says, at her childhood, Maxine Hong Kingston listened to her mother's mesmerizing tales of a China where girls are worthless, tradition is exalted, and only a strong, wily woman can scratch her way upwards. Growing up in a changing America surrounded by Chinese myth and memory, this is her story of two cultures and one trenchant lyrical journey into womanhood. Then I found one I'm really, really excited for. This is the Showa Anthology, Modern Japanese Short Stories, edited by Van C. Gessel and Tomon Matsumoto. And this one, I was so excited to find. Very excited to work my way through these short stories. Then now to another controversial one. I decided to grab Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. Now, I want to read this one so that I have the context in my head, but then I also want to do a deep dive on literature analysis, like critiques of this book and historical like commentary of this book, of how accurate and non-accurate it is. As I work my way through that process, I will decide if it's something I'm going to include on my channel or not. It's not one that I've ever read because I have only ever heard bad things, but I want to have this knowledge in my head of, okay, so this is what this means, this is how this perpetuates stereotypes or doesn't. That's why I got this one. And more that I'd never heard of. So I have Paradise of the Blind by Dong Tu Hong. This one is Vietnamese literature. This one is an exquisite portrait of three Vietnamese women struggling to survive in a society where subservience to men is expected and communist corruption crushes every dream. Through the eyes of Hang, a young woman in her 20s who has grown up amidst the slums and intermittent beauty of Hanoi, we come to know the tragedy of her family as land reform rips apart their village. When her uncle Chan's political loyalties replace family devotion, Hang is torn between her mother's appalling self-sacrifice and the bitterness of her aunt, who can avenge but not forgive. Only by freeing herself from the past will Hang be able to find dignity and a future. This one sounds super duper interesting. It says banned in its own country, the first novel from Vietnam ever published in the United States. One that's interesting because I don't actually have a copy of this book yet. I couldn't find a copy there. This is Critical Insights of the Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. So Amy Tan wrote the Joy Luck Club, but this one is a collection of essays about the Joy Luck Club. And that I'm very, very interested in because part of one of the PhD programs that I'm looking into is a comparative literature dual PhD degree. So it's comparative literature and then East Asian studies. And I feel like that might be something I'm really interested in. So I'm trying to learn more about comparative literature. And so very much interested in anything that talks about something else. So we'll be trying to find a copy of the Joy Luck Club. I couldn't believe I couldn't find a freaking copy of it at the bookstore. We'll then be adding it to my collection. Another one I've never heard of is Chinese Lessons by, what the crap is this guy's name? John Pomfret. And this one is, it says, as a 22-year-old exchange student at Nanjing University in 1981, John Pomfret was one of the first American students to be admitted to China after the Communist Revolution. 20 years later, he returned and immersed himself again in the remarkable life stories of his former classmates. In Chinese Lessons, he tells of old Wu, whose father was killed during the Cultural Revolution for the crime of being an intellectual, book idiot Zhao, who labored in the fields for years rather than agree to a party-arranged marriage, and little Guan, who was forced to publicly denounce her father. The result is an illuminating report on China's transition from near-feudal communism to first-world capitalism, and a moving portrait of its extraordinary people. And I found this one, also, again, very excited. This one is called Storywala, short fiction from South Asian writers, including stories from Salman Rushdie. I do have one of his books. Jhumpa Lahiri, I do not. And Michael Ondaatje, and I did have... Didn't Michael Ondaatje write The Silent Patient or something like that? This is a collection of short stories, and I am so excited for it. I love any collections like these, also because it introduces you to so many new authors that you haven't necessarily read from before. I don't have any of Jhumpa Lahiri's books, but I'm very excited to finally read some of their work. Then I grabbed this one, which is A Different Mirror, A History of Multicultural America by Ronald Takaki. Strangers from a Different Shore is actually the book that I wanted from this author, but this was the one that I found at the used bookstore, and so I decided to go ahead and grab it. And it's a dramatic new retelling of our nation's past by today's preeminent multiculturalism scholar, Ronald Takaki. This book examines America's history in a different mirror from the perspective of minority people themselves. And there is a section, it's chapters like 8 and 9, something like that, that's all about immigration from Asian countries. And so this one I feel like will very much fit in with this one, in that it's not necessarily the entire book, but sections of it that will be beneficial. And then the final book that I have to show you guys is one that was actually recommended to me by one of my friends just because he thought it was a really fascinating book, and that is The Square Meal. I was so excited that I found this one. This one is by Jane Ziegelman and Andrew Coe, and it's all about the Great Depression and culinary history of that time period. And I would never have any interest in reading this if it wasn't for my friend who read it and said that it was incredibly fascinating. And so I put it on my wish list, and then I found a copy, and I freaking love that. So those are all the books that I have right now. I think what I want to do now is get some water and then completely redo those shelves and see if I can make categories. I would love it. I don't have a label maker. You'd expect me to have a label maker. I don't have a label maker, but I would love to have labels on my shelves to pretend that it's like a bookstore. Is that just me? That could just be me. I'm gonna stop talking now because my throat hurts, and then work on that.
Interesting. It's conflicting. There's some evidence of these red stars, or this, this sort of like shattering, sharp energy. It's around the same time period. You wouldn't be able to definitively say like, oh, like it was.
little bit of a check-in. Today is Monday the 18th. I'm officially starting back up with work today after 2 weeks off, and honestly kind of a bummer. I was enjoying having time off. It was much needed, and I am balancing now the ideas of like efficiency and being productive with like having good mental health is really like, I'm trying to figure that out. I very much used to be the person I was like, go, go, go. And I had a ton of things I was always doing. Like undergrad, I was kind of all over the place, just committed to so many things. I was leading some organizations on campus. I was participating in other ones, organizing events on campus to benefit nonprofits locally in that community. I had a major and then I had 2 minors, and then I had like all these other projects I was doing. So I was just like doing all of the things, and I almost finished with the 3rd minor, but I would have had to stay 1 extra semester. And then I also did a writing endorsement, which was this huge project where you had to take a certain amount of writing intensive courses and then write this gigantic paper and get the head of the writing department and the head of the psychology department, which was where my degree was, to sign off on it. So it was like doing all of the things. And then in grad school, I really slowed down. I went, for some reason, the change from psychology to social work was just really, really hard for me. And I really struggled with it. And I tried at different points to get involved in things on campus. And I definitely did. There was like a veterans health, there was a veterans tech group that I was supporting. And so a couple days a week, or I think maybe it was like 1 day a week, I would go on campus and assist with veterans who were being taught how to use computers for the first time. So like helping with internet literacy and things. And I really struggled with everything. And then from that point on, it's been very like up and down of like, I'm really productive and I love my work and I'm getting a ton of stuff done. And then things will get too much and my mental health will just dip, or like I had a death in the family and it will dip. And I think that's pretty natural. But now in my 30s, I am trying to figure out the balance of basically, the last month I read 2 different productivity books. One is Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey, and the other one was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And they were 2 competing books, effectively, because Rest is Resistance was really focusing on slowing down and taking time for yourself and acknowledging that if you live in the United States, our systems are created through patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, all of those things. And so they have this like go, go, go mindset, and you have to be as productive as possible. So that book was really like slowing down. Like you take time off because you deserve it as a human, not because you want to be a more effective, more efficient worker. And so balancing that with also Atomic Habits, which was really focusing on breaking down your environment to support your growth. And so if there's a goal that you want to reach, making tiny changes in your environment so that you eventually reach that goal while also enjoying the process, whether you reach your goal or not, like whatever the outcome. Also, I know my hair is a little bit insane. This is actually one of those headbands that you use for like washing your face, but my hair is at the perfect length where it's in my face constantly, but not long enough to stay back in a ponytail. And because I have really thick hair, the only thing that holds my hair back that doesn't give me a headache is this. I will be wearing this, so I'm going to talk about some serious things while looking ridiculous, but I don't care. That's my vibe. But yes, Atomic Habits was really focused on like efficiency, productivity, how to get the most out of your environment and the things that you're doing. So it was like very much feeding into that like capitalist growth mindset instead of Rest is Resistance. So I'm like battling the 2 of those, where I'm trying to figure out how I can be this person that enjoys education and doing a lot and learning a lot and, all of those things, while also trying not to overdo it because I have a habit of overdoing it and then burning out. So that will be like a lifelong thing, but that's what I'm working on right now emotionally. I decided to get a month of Skillshare just to see I end up enjoying it. I've had Skillshare off and on. I am not sponsored. I've had Skillshare off and on, but I have heard a lot about Ali Abdul's productivity classes and motivation classes and stuff. So I'm doing one of those right now. But I also wanted to then just come on here and give an update on the books that I'm reading, because it's my booktube channel. I have been trying to learn social media a little bit more and trying to create like this environment on YouTube where I am taking it more seriously and like having it be like a personal like time capsule kind of, because it is fun to go back and watch old videos from the past of like when we've gone on vacation or what books I was reading or whatever. But starting this new journey of this like very informal independent research, learning as much as I can before moving towards a PhD, I want to document that process and see how it goes. Let's get into the books that I'm reading. I'm currently reading a billion of them because I always am. The first book that I'm reading on my Kindle, I am rereading A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I read this one a couple years ago, and honestly, I'm glad that I'm rereading it because I didn't remember anything. I was talking to my sister about it because we read it together a couple years ago, and I honestly did not remember any plot points. Like, I remembered main character was at Oxford, and then there's a vampire, and I remember thinking he was a douche and not liking it, but I decided to give it another chance because Kaylin, Grace Apple, who I've been obsessed with watching all of her videos, recently read it and was talking about it, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a shot again. So I've been reading it again. I'm like halfway through, really enjoying it, but still agree that the vampire, Matthew, is a douche. We'll see how it goes. I don't like how he's written in that his primal needs are more important than her consent. Not a fan of that, but I'm reading that one on my Kindle at night. And then also I wanted a book that's like kind of more funsies to start reading before we're like ready to go to sleep. Between like 8:30 and 9, we normally then are like old people and we're like, I'm going to bed. We lay in bed reading. And so the book that I was reading last night was Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow. This is the third book in the Morgan Crow series by Jessica Townsend. The fourth book is coming out this year, I think. So I was reading this last night. I read the first 90 pages. It's a very, very fast read. It's a middle grade, super fun. It's got magic systems and all kinds of creatures and shit, and I just love it so much. So I wanted to get this one read before the next one comes out because I do really enjoy them. Then also for funsies, I'm rereading The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame because I freaking loved this book when I was a kid, and like Frog and Toad and all of them. I was never into the series that Brian Jock wrote, Redwall. I was never into Redwall, but my sister was. But I remember loving Wind in the Willows. I haven't read this book since I was like 8. So I decided to pick it up, and I sat there and I read the first 20 pages, and it was lovely. Really enjoying this one. So these two are very much my like super cozy reads, and then I have Discovery of Witches that is also kind of ongoing and cozy to balance the two books that I'm reading that are very not cozy. I am making my way through The Making of Asian America by Erica Lee. This is a pretty decent sized book. I mean, it's like physically large, but it's not honestly that long. The actual book itself is less than 400 pages, and then there's like an epilogue and an afterword and a postscript and all kinds of stuff, plus a huge bibliography at the back, which I'm very excited for. So I've been very slowly working my way through this one. This is the end of the first section, so I'm going to try to finish that up today. I'm up to page 42, and it's up to page 56 then, which will move into The Making of Asian America During the Age of Mass Migration and Asian Exclusion. In the beginning, it's really just talking about the history of Asian immigration to the United States and how it was very much not something that a lot of people agreed to do, and they became slaves and indentured servants. Also, then this obsession from European world with the other, and this concept that like Asia was like the complete opposite of Europe, and so they like fetishized that, and it's gross, and it sucks reading it. Honestly, it really sucks. But I'm getting a lot out of it so far, really enjoying it. I mean, as much as you can enjoy horrific things. And then the other one that I'm working my way through is a section of this book. So this is Manufacturing Consent. I've talked about this book about a billion times. This was recommended to me by one of my friends. And so I made it through the introduction and preface and all of that. And then I started reading the kind of beginning chapter where they're really establishing their theory, or I don't know what the word would be called, but they have this model for how media works in the United States, and it's called the propaganda model. And they broke it down into different sections. And so basically there's like these layers that news stories have to go through before they reach the public, and how that's very much impacted by corporations that have financial interests, corporations that own the media, the government, all kinds of stuff. And so what is actually happening versus what we are told as citizens of the United States could be two completely different things. And so they were giving some examples, they're breaking down their the model. And so I was reading through that, and I got the basic like ideas from each section. I completed that area, and then instead of going into the individual chapters, because also this book, again, not very long except for it's tiny font, so it can be kind of dense. I skipped forward, and I am only going to read the chapters right now that cover Asia. Biggest one is on Vietnam and the Vietnam War. And that one I read like 10 pages of yesterday. That started where did that start? That started like right around here. Yeah. So I mean, this is more than 10 pages. I did not read a lot because it also goes to right here. So I still have, you know, a crap ton more to read. But this one was bumming me out a lot. Reading about the Vietnam War and the things that they told the United States versus what was actually happening. Yeah, that's really hard to read. So the two of these combined, this one and this one, have been a lot for mental load. That's why I'm reading a couple funsies books to balance that out. But I'm getting a lot out of them. I really like, I'm happy that I'm picking these up and that I'm learning a lot. I'm writing down a whole bunch of stuff. Like I need to look up more resources and literature on Asian slavery in the United States, in Spain, and all kinds of places, basically, and how after slavery, Black slavery was outlawed everywhere, they then were like, well, we still need people to work, so let's just go kidnap people from Asia and force them to do these horrific things. And that's not really ever talked about. We learned very much about Black-white relations and slavery, and for like good reason, obviously. Asians then get left out of the conversations. And so I want to learn more about that. So I wrote down a couple things. There is some resources in the back of this book that I want to look up and see if I can find copies of those to learn. My husband was feeling very antsy over the weekend. I just wanted to like get up and get out of the house because we were very much feeling the Sunday scaries. We went back to Yardley, which is this cute little town in Bucks County that's not super far from us. And we went to Pretty Bird Coffee, which is one of my favorite coffee shops. It's so cute and all their stuff is really yummy. So I had a lavender latte and then he got a blackberry amaretto latte, which I hate amaretto, but I freaking loved that latte. It was so yummy. I liked it more than mine, honestly. It tasted primarily like blackberry though. But so we did that and then we went over to Commonplace Reader, which is a local indie bookstore there that I'm also obsessed with. He got The Appeal by Janice Hallett, which I was so excited for him to read because I read that. And he's devouring it because it's a very fast read. It's an epistolary novel, so it's all told through like text messages and emails and stuff. And he's reading through it and like stopping and being like, hold on. Are you saying this person did this? And so it's very fun watching him go through the process because I read it and I know the outcome. So we'll see if he figures out the outcome or not. But then of course I got 4 books, and as I was holding a pile of 7 books, he was like, why don't you see if your library has some of those? And I was like, why don't you shut up? I put back a couple, but I got some that I'm very excited about. I got Bliss Montage by Ling Ma, who is the author of the book Severance that I have not read, but I think I do have a copy on my Kindle. This is a super short collection of short stories that sound super duper weird. It says, Ling Ma brings us 8 wildly different tales that take on our everyday fears and fantasies. This is the one that got my attention. A woman lives in a mansion with her husband and all of her ex-boyfriends. It's like, that sounds terrible. So very excited to read this one. Then one that I've been seeing all over Instagram, so I was happy that they had a copy. I picked up Green Frog by Gina Chung. This is a collection of short stories. Again, very excited for this one. It's about a pair of talking dolls help twins escape a stifling home. A heart boils on the stove as part of an elaborate cure for melancholy, and a fox demon contemplates avenging her sister's death. Again, very weird short stories, but super excited for them. And then I got 2 memoirs. So the first one is Speak Okinawa by Elizabeth Miki Brina. And this one is about Elizabeth's mother, who was working as a hostess in a nightclub on U.S.-occupied Okinawa when she met the American soldier who would become her husband. Language barrier and power imbalance that defined their early relationship followed them to the predominantly white upstate New York suburb where they moved to raise their only daughter. There, Elizabeth grew up with all the trappings of a typical American childhood and adolescence. While she felt almost no connection to her mother's distant home, neither did she feel comfortable among her peers. It wasn't until decades later that Elizabeth finally recognized the shame and self-loathing that haunted both her and her mother. So it's really focusing on culture dynamics and family dynamics. It says, reckons with the injustices that reverberate throughout the history of Okinawa and its people. Super, very much interested to get to this one. And then also one that I'd never heard of, and that one is Without You, There Is No Us, Undercover Among the Sons of North Korea's Elite by Suki Kim. And this one says, it's 2011, all universities in North Korea have been shut down for an entire year. The students sent to construction fields, except for the 270 students at the all-male Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, a walled compound where portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il look on impassively from the walls of every room, and where Suki Kim has gone undercover as a missionary and a teacher. Over the next 6 months, she will eat 3 meals a day with her young charges and struggle to teach them English. She will tell them carefully about the world beyond their borders, from the internet to electoral democracy to Harry Potter, always aware that the more they know, the more they risk. Then Kim Jong-il dies, her students are devastated, and Suki witnesses the end of an era. It just sounded like it was going to be really interesting. I know that there are some really popular books from people that have escaped North Korea. What I'm hoping to do is create this massive list of the most popular memoirs, nonfiction, fiction that have to do with Asian countries or people that lived there or our perceptions of them or identity, all of that. And so I want this like collection of all of them so I can read them and learn about how identity is created and perceived. Having some like variety in the type of memoirs. I have one from Vietnam, then there's Okinawa, North Korea, South Korea, I guess, or Korea, well, Korean American. Anyway, creating this huge list of all of these books so that I can learn along the way. I think that's probably enough rambling for now because it's been like 20 minutes of me procrastinating and rambling. Instead, I'm going to prepare myself for work and then hopefully check in later and see eventually how this video comes together. I don't know what this is going to end up looking like. I'm just trying to record whenever I think of it, and we'll see how much footage I end up putting together. It'll probably be over the course of like a week or so, but again, we will see. As I was editing this video and gonna get ready to post, I realized that I never formally wrapped it up. I'm gonna wrap it up now. I have a bunch of other stuff that I want to work on. I am now back at work. It's later in the day on Tuesday, so I'm done work for the day. I had therapy. Now I'm waiting for my husband to get home, and then we're gonna go to the gym. But I wanted to wrap up this video so that I can get started on some other ones. Let me know if this vlog format is working. Does it suck? You let me know, because I like watching other people's vlogs, but I know that they're a lot of work and really hard to create like engaging ones. So I'm trying, definitely a learning process, but if you've made it this far, I very much appreciate you. Let me know what you guys are reading, and that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.